Hey, friends, Ashton here, and welcome back to another episode of Good, True, and Beautiful. It feels very good for me to be back behind this microphone today. And it's been a while since I've posted here at the podcast. But if there was one voice, if there was one village elder that we needed to call back into the room, it would be Brother Mark Nepo. I'm so grateful just for the light that he has given me over the years, his generosity that he's given to us over the years. And with that being said, he's got a new book in the world called The Language of the Soul, which, of course, if there's anyone that we need to break that down for us, it's Brother Mark Nepo. So with that being said, I'm so excited to welcome back Mark Nepo. Mark, welcome back.
Oh, thank you, Ashton. Wonderful to be with you for sure.
The Language of the Soul. So in this book, this is your latest work. I'd love to talk about the genesis of why, and why this book, why now.
Yeah,
But you begin, with that great quote about um, these are all just
yeah,
fingers pointing to the moon,
yeah. So this
right?
is attributed to Buddha, where he was talking one night after dinner under a full moon, and his students, he sensed they were too enwrapped with his words, and he stopped and said, "My words are only fingers pointing to the moon. Make sure you look at the moon." And while this book, and what the book is, as you know, but we'll share for our listeners is, this really came out of years of teaching where I would stumble on word origins and not, I've always been interested, not just because um, I'm a word geek, but because I've noticed over time that the further we go back, the more whole
Yeah.
and profound these meanings are, because words, like pieces of nature, they erode over time, they become
Yes.
fragmented, and more often than not, that wholeness just emanates so much more. But I started purposely with that quote because it's really not about the words, it's about what the words point to. It's the relationship, that these placeholders, these mysterious placeholders have so that we can have a relationship in Buddha's case directly with the moon,
Yeah.
directly with the things that matter in life. And so, both my publisher, Joel Fotinos, and I, we didn't want this to be a glossary or a dictionary. We really wanted it to be a
Mm.
journey around the things that matter. So as you know that there are archetypal chapters, and I explore these in word clusters to uncover meaning. And then there's a running kind of story conversation around throughout the whole book with you, the reader, with historical, mythic, and personal kind of profound moments and journeys with language.
Yeah, yeah. And I love too, some of the ethos of all of your work is when we're talking about the soul, let's begin right out of the gate and say, even it can't be defined. So
Absolutely.
we need words to give us structure, shadow, uh, sound, taste, flavor. But at the end of the day, soul, God, love, you can't just put your thumb on it and say that's what this is. And this is why we need these words.
Yeah, and this is also why we need, you know, um, not to slip into arguing about these names, because the things that matter, absolutely, Ashton, um, can't be named,
That's
can't
right.
be
They're
described,
not
but
nameable.
we point to them, we try to, and so if anyone listening, if we use different words or we say God and that doesn't work, well, find your own synonyms because
Yeah,
basically, I think if you believe in anything larger than yourself, you're a mystic.
there you go.
And, as soon as we try to name what's larger than us, then everybody goes to their scientific or theological
Yeah.
or, corners. Even an atheist believes in something larger than themselves. They call it nothing. I call it everything. What's the difference?
call it nothing, I call it everything. I love that. I'm going to read a part here of the nature of the soul um, as we kind of dig into this a little bit more, because I thought this was so helpful. You write, for words are only markers for what can't be named. Words only point to the way. What matters is the depth of spirit that enlivens all things before they are named. The task of the poet is to invoke the depth of spirit to show itself, however briefly, through the images and stories we can conjure through the brushwork of our truth and tenderness. And so, any word that is worthy helps us live, but only when we open it and drink there. My
Yeah.
goodness, what were you drinking that day, Brother Nepo?
Well, and I think, th this is it's so powerful. And let's just talk about, what we call soul. There are 1,000 names. And, I love and every tradition has
Mhm.
their way of describing or pointing to this. And so two things here. One is a metaphor, and one is I love the Hindu worldview in the way they have their Trinity and so many gods, but their Trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And so Brahma is unnameable life
Mhm.
force, spirit, everything that cannot be contained, that lives forever, it can never die. Einstein called it energy, and it would enter matter. Well, Vishnu is the life of forms, the god of
Mhm.
forms. So, that spirit, that Brahma, that un, unending spirit that shows itself, every universal spirit enters you, enters me, enters the headphones you're wearing, enters, my dog that's downstairs, and every form eventually dissolves. The lifespan of
Mhm.
a dog, of a person, even a piece of wood eventually erodes, you know, and then Shiva, the transformer, then that undying energy or spirit goes back into the unformed whole to enter other forms again and again and again. And so, you've heard the term, which I speak to in the book too, namaste,
Yes.
namaste. And
Got that book. I actually have it bookmarked here. I've got a sticky note somewhere because I wanted to chat through
uh
that.
and and in the Hindu tradition it is referred to as I honor the portion of universal spirit that resides in you.
I bow to the everythingness. I bow to the namelessness that inhabits you.
And so we might in the West call that soul.
Yep.
Buddhism calls it Dharma nature. Sufis have a different name for it. There's so many different, and again, in science and physics, energy and matter. And so it doesn't really matter what we call it. The question is, can we be good stewards of the portion of universal soul or spirit that resides in us while we're here?
Mm.
And so a couple of metaphors here that are helpful. And one is a bluebird in a bluebird house. We all know we stick that little house out there. It's got a little hole, and the portion of air that's in the house is part of the sky,
Mm.
and the bluebird goes in and out of it. Well, that's no different than the soul that goes into the little house that's me while I'm here and flies out into the larger sky of spirit and then goes back into the house. And so we're always the inner life
Yep.
and the outer life. We're constantly merging and filling each other. And then the other metaphor is, we see trees, beautiful trees, and well, a tree above ground, it seems singular, but then it only stands because it has roots.
Mm.
And the
As
roots
above, so below.
Yes, and the roots are there to gain nutrients from the soil to feed the tree. Well, this is another way to look at the tree as like the self that lives in the world. The roots are like the soul or that portion of universal spirit. And then the soil is that unnameable universal ground of spirit. So we have to relate to all of it if we're going to be fully alive in the world. You just can't be a tree or a self without a soul
That's
that's
right.
connected to spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea, maybe this wasn't necessarily the agenda of your book, but like a welcoming of matter and spirit are one. And as we develop the language of the soul, that becomes more and more clear. I love how you talk about these words, how they, not that they get damaged, but they lose their shine over time. And I'm kind of an etymology geek, you know. I love seeing these old words and what words were hidden in the words, and even the word inspire, right? Like
Yeah,
in spirit is right there staring at us.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yet we miss it. We miss it.
Absolutely. And so many of these words, and again, they're not, there's a natural erosion, just like
Yes.
nature erodes. So, you take a word, and here's which is in the book, but before the Elizabethan age, there was a Greek word daemonian.
Hmm.
And that word daemonian referred to both an affirming spirit and a challenging spirit. In the Native American tradition, you've heard of the trickster spirit.
Yep.
Not so much trickster as it's deceiving us, but trickster in that it surprises us with unexpected challenges, the same way koans do from the Eastern tradition that jar our pattern thinking. So daemonian, which allowed us both to be affirmed and challenged in order to grow, somewhere in the Elizabethan age, that got split into two words, angel and demon.
Hmm.
And ever since, the challenging spirit has been feared as evil.
Hmm.
And now that stunts our growth
Yep.
because
Yep.
without challenge, it's not just, even today, you can see in our modern world the out of balance, nothing should be uncomfortable or challenging. It should all just be affirming. No, I mean, we grow from both.
That's right.
We grow from the challenges and the affirmation. And so that word was just, split, boom, there we go. And and another amazing word that I love is the original meaning of the word genius.
Hmm.
We think of genius in the modern world as an absolute, exceptional uh, skill or gift, like Baryshnikov or Einstein or Mozart. Well, that happens, and that may be true, but that's not the original definition. The original definition of genius is attendant spirit.
Hmm.
Everyone has a genius. Again, we can call that inner voice, guardian angel. Um, you know, there's 1,000 different names for that guardian spirit. So a cognate of genius is genie. So you take the famous, Aladdin's lamp in the 1001 Arabian Nights. Well, we've kind of made a cartoon out of it that it's not just rub a lamp and you get what you want.
Yep.
It's that if you embrace the lamp of your life, your attendant spirit will show up to guide you.
Hmm. So
So that
where does silence and stillness and solitude fit into learning the language of the soul?
Oh, well, absolutely, because just as music always comes out of silence and returns to silence, all the markers of these words come out of what's wordless. And so when we are silent, when we stop the noise, we start to hear the deeper rhythms of the universe.
Hmm.
You know, the Upanishads in the Hindu tradition, which are their holy texts, anonymous. Upanishad in Sanskrit means instruction at the feet of a master. But these are, by definition, unseeable masters.
Hmm.
And the poets who were believed mythically to have recorded these, anonymous, were the Vedic poets, and they were believed to have listened in silence to record the hymns of the universe,
Wow.
to record the hymns of the universe. And so this is why, you know, the names point to things.
That's right. Yeah, you're going to, if you emerge from that place of nothingness, the stillness and the silence, and you find yourself some words to hold on to, eventually it's going to lead you to the place that has no words. And
Yeah.
that's the paradox of the soul, is that um you can only you may arrive at a place that feels like nothingness, but it's going to take some thingness to get you there, but you have to hold those two tensions together.
Well, and always, and spirit shows itself in the smallest detail.
Yeah.
But it's just like, the stars have all this space around them that hold them, that point them up. And everything in existence is held by the spaces around it. The one of the I use in the book, one of the French poet Paul Valéry
Oh
had,
yeah.
yeah, he had that beautiful saying. He said, true seeing is when you look at something long enough that you forget its name.
That's right. That's right.
So, language in the modern world has become a label or something that, it's like if you can vegetables or sausage or something and you put it in the basement, you got a label on it. Well, that's until you open the can and taste it, that's not it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the same thing, you look at a tree again, a tree. Well, that's a great placeholder tree, but then I need to be with it enough until I remember the wonder that there's this wooden thing growing out of the ground that we bookmark as tree, but it's much more than the name we give it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we hold, the ego loves to cling. It gives us control when we can say label, category, name. And not to say those things are bad, they are necessary, but it's when we get caught up on the certainty of those things, or the right or wrongness, or, what jersey that gives us to wear. I think the great invitation: drink the word, taste and see. And
Yeah, and
then
and
now
one of the
may you find.
words, one of the words that I found fascinating is the word sage. Now, sage originally was a verb that meant to taste.
Really.
Yeah, it meant to taste. So wisdom comes from tasting directly of life. It
So a
wasn't,
sage became someone who has tasted something.
yes, and
And then,
it's the first time it became that we know of that it became used as a noun was through Socrates in ancient Greece when he, he kind of he named the seven sages of ancient Greece. Now, as soon as he did that, everybody started arguing. Well, you left out Harry. He's pretty smart. And we get away from directly tasting to who are the really good tasters.
mm, mm-hmm,
And so we need to return. Wisdom comes from the direct tasting of life.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean we
Yes.
can't learn from sages, but a true sage will point you back to your own direct tasting of life.
That's right. Your own experience, right? You can, there's only so much you can take from a book, a sermon, a podcast. You have to go digest something. Yeah, got to
Yeah,
taste it for yourself. And then you can know, oh, yeah, that's true for me.
absolutely. And then we compare notes. We
Mm-hmm.
compare notes on the mystery of what it is to be here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is that, do you think that that leans into Jesus' invitation of the narrow path? That
Sure. I
you
mean, I
know that
think
you've got to go experience something yourself, that it's not this wide thing that the entire world's on. You need to go taste, you need to go
absolutely. And I think
yeah.
that in every tradition, there is a truth story that really points up the same thing, points up the same thing. And um, there's a great, very touching story around grief in the Buddhist tradition, where a mother lost her daughter very young, and oh, she was just devastated, and she goes finds Buddha, and in her tears says, "Can you bring her back to life?" And Buddha takes her hand and says, "If you can find one person on earth who hasn't known loss, I will bring her back." And of course, she goes away and she can't. So now she comes back in her tears and says, "Can you teach me how to live with this?"
Mm,
And no one, that's the great parrot, not just with grief, but with wonder and with the
yeah,
portion of universal spirit. The paradox of life is that no one has ever been here who's you or me. No one can see what you see or feel what you feel, and no one can do it alone.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's only been one you. No one's ever tried out you before. The spirits only
Yeah.
said, hey, what's it like to be Mark Nepo? Let's go find out. um there was a word, trying to find it. If I pronounce it wrong, please correct me.
No,
You know
sure,
me,
no
a
worries.
redneck over here pronouncing words from
Ah,
Japan. Mikado,
yes.
and it stands for, it's the Japanese word of truth, reality, and sincerity. The reason this stuck out to me was for two reasons. One of the things that I gathered from your words in this book are the language of the soul allows you to penetrate illusion and touch reality. It allows you to um, maybe not hold or grasp, but at least dance with what's real, right? I think
Yeah,
that may
and
be a
feel
better verb.
feel it like a flag. When the wind, a flag is never more alive when it's unfurled in the wind. If
Yeah,
a flag somehow gets snagged on itself, it'll tear.
yeah.
So we don't have to hold on to it, and we have to let it through. And yes, so reality and sincerity, in the Chinese tradition, very akin to Japanese, there is a saying that given sincerity, there will be enlightenment. Given sincerity. And
Mm,
so we move, let's look at the word sincere, which is another one that's just
mm-hmm,
amazing, because that goes back in the West to the Renaissance. And in the Renaissance, we know that, there were so many talented, just amazing for a couple of hundred years, just remarkable sculptors, painters, everything, you know. And so, particularly sculptors. And so there were a lot of stone sellers. They were like hardware stores, frequent, just
mm,
everywhere. And like in any business or tradition, there were honest stone sellers and fraudulent stone sellers. And the way that a fraudulent stone seller would try to pass off a cracked piece of marble is they would put wax, polish it so that you couldn't see the crack, and try to sell it as a perfect stone.
mm.
So in Latin, sincere means without wax. So very quickly,
Something that's real.
teachers of the age said to be sincere is to not hide the cracks.
Mm,
To be sincere is to show flaws and all. To be human is to be, and so given sincerity, there will be enlightenment, which
Yeah,
dovetails with in the Tibetan spiritual mythology, it's said that a spiritual warrior, not a military warrior, a spiritual warrior, one who is committed to a life of transformation, always has a crack in their heart because that's how the mysteries get in.
that's right. That's right. That's the
So
wabi sabi.
yeah, and so you know, to be vulnerable, another word, to be vulnerable is to let the cracks show, to let so the mystery can get in, and so there's integrity and realness in our relationships. And vulnerable comes from the Latin vulnus, which means to carry a wound gracefully.
You know, not that I would go back and ask for a do-over on naming my children, but when you wrote in here that the Japanese often will name a child Mikado in the hopes that the life of the child will be lived beneath all falseness,
Yeah.
what in the world? I mean, like, if there's any longing in my heart as a dad for my kids, it is that originality, that authenticity, that thing that's you, that's only been you, like permeate all falseness, you know.
Yeah.
But so beautiful. The Japanese language is so beautiful.
Well, and it's remarkable because both, as you know, Japanese and Chinese, we use letters that form words that form sentences, but they are pictorial
Yeah,
languages,
yeah,
image based. So the ideogram is the unit which certain markings conjure images that go together to convey. And so one in there that there's several I've referred to, but one todatsu me is this is very interesting. It's translated into English as freedom. The ideogram is more helpful because it shows that English translation is a conclusion. The
yeah.
ideogram conveys a process. So the ideogram for Todatsu means slipping through a net.
Wow.
So the result is that you are free. If a fish slips through the net, it's free.
So
But
there's something you had to go through.
to name it, to translate it as freedom in English doesn't tell us, share what the Japanese idiom was trying to point to,
Yeah, yeah,
slipping through a net.
yeah. You know, I often, when I get the chance to teach, I will talk about how show me your language and I will show you your life. It's
Mm.
kind of a mantra, kind of a phrase. And that's exactly what this book is. And I feel like as all of us, the mystics, seekers on the path, you kind of got to go do your homework, right? You got to put some notes in your pocket, because the net is coming. There's going to be a net, right? And,
Absolutely.
and if through the realm of form, if freedom is that which all of us long for at the heart, soul, and cellular level, like you're going to just need some of these notes, some of these words. You're going to need Mikado in your back pocket, And I think that's the great gift of your work here. Have you found that to be true in your own journey?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because these words are very, very, uh, they become symbolic and spiritual like road signs, not pointing out a particular road, but helping us stay real. So, one of the things, let's just stay with that slipping through a net for a moment. And um and and then there's another word that's just so one of my favorite and so useful. But so slipping through a net, you know, when we are challenged or afraid or caught, sometimes our reflex is to get bigger,
Mm,
and sometimes we need to. But often the way to slip through a net is to become essential and have nothing extraneous. So with this in mind, during the last year, we have a fence for our dog, and it's just a metal fence with thin bars that are so far apart. And I saw a bird go up to it and actually hold its wings close to its side to slip through the fence.
All that thing that helps it navigate the world, that thing
Yeah.
that we may all know it by, had to thin, had to become
So
smaller.
so sometimes slipping through the net, the way to freedom is to be smaller, not bigger.
Hmm.
Is to be quieter, not louder.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when you think of the Japanese tea ceremony, which is a whole way that conveys a whole spiritual way of life, the tea hut by design is low to the ground and narrow so that you have to leave everything that's extraneous
Mm,
outside in order to enter the tea hut.
yeah.
And this was also the way I think of the door to wisdom. So there's a famous story, there was two lifelong friends in the 1700s in Japan. Rikyu was one of the early tea masters, and Taiko actually became emperor.
Hmm.
Was a samurai, was pretty brutal, but every once in a while, Taiko would go back to have tea with Rikyu. And it irked him, but he would have to take off his armor and put his sword down and his helmet. And then everyone in the kingdom bowed to him, but then he would have to have nothing on and get on his knees to shimmy into the tea hut to have tea with Ricky.
Beautiful metaphor.
So one of the other words, which I'm sure you've run across in the book, is the word sacrifice.
Yeah.
My God, sacrifice. So we know sacrifice. It's come to me, and this is where the contemporary meaning is very powerful and honorable and true. During the pandemic, health workers sacrificed. We know throughout history, soldiers have sacrificed for the life of freedom, and it often is giving of oneself or even one's life for the common good. And not but that kind of sacrifice grows out of a deeper soil. The original meaning of the word sacrifice is to give up what no longer works in order to stay close to what is sacred.
Hmm.
To give up what no longer works in order to stay close to what is sacred. That is an ongoing practice
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And
Like
the
the 12 steppers say, I just keep using more and more of what's not working.
ex-
Therefore, something's got to be sacrificed.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so, that what it says about life and the assumptions is what's sacred never changes. We are the ones who
Mm-hmm.
change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what worked and what's hard about this always is that what worked was necessary at one point, but because we grow,
Yeah.
it no longer works. And we have to
Yeah.
put it down to stay close to what is sacred. And so this is a very spiritually practical question. And I invite everyone who's listening, to spend some time journaling and maybe in conversation with a loved one, a friend. Is there something in your life that's not working right now?
Yeah.
How might you start to put it down in order to stay close to what is sacred?
Yeah. Yeah. The ego has such a strange way of camouflaging itself in these words that we can hold on to and then we cling to and we think we found a new realm of certainty and this is right. But if you're going to grow, if you're going to evolve, if the world's going to become deeper and wider and more mysterious, which the more you go inward, the more that's what's going to happen. Um, I think that's a great invitation you're giving us is to even hold the words lightly that are moving you in the language of the soul, because you may have to drop some of those at some
Well,
point.
I can give you two personal examples, and one is, excuse me, one is, um, and almost 40 years ago, in my 30s, I almost died from a rare form of lymphoma,
Mm-hmm.
and before that, I was a driven young poet. My identity was poet with a capital P. And then, with hopefully, I was, you know, hoping if I worked hard enough, maybe I'd write one or two great poems, and add to literature or something. And well, on the other side of, almost dying, forget all that. Um, I no longer could recognize, I had lost my drive, which was very
Hmm.
confusing. I was so
Hmm.
grateful to still be here, but I thought, did I lose my gift? What happened? Well, I didn't lose it. It just went deeper. And I was now drawn to things, not driven. And so
Yeah,
I'm always a poet with a small p because that's the way my soul breathes. But I was more an unnameable spirit after that.
there you go.
And so, you know, it's like we all know, like with potted plants, if you tend to a potted plant and water it, the reward is you're going to have to repot it.
Right.
Otherwise, its roots, as it grows, its roots will
Yeah.
get bound and it'll die.
Yeah.
So we go through many iterations of having to put things down, including identities,
Hmm.
to get closer to what is sacred. So, being as a young man, that being a poet as a capital P was the initial pot,
Yeah.
my spirit. But then
Literally the first container.
I needed I needed to repot myself.
And then after you graduate from a container, you're always introduced to the contents again, which is, as you said, unnameable spirit, or it becomes even more mysterious. And then you're
Yeah.
probably going to need another pot. So you're telling me the whole human process of being repotted is not one and done. This is a continual
No,
thing.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Um, as we wrap up, um, language helps us understand and give meaning in a divided world, right? I mean, there's land and there's ocean. We need to know the difference between the two. There's a red light and a green light.
Yeah.
There's a hot stove and there's a stove that's not. Like, language is helpful, but it can also divide us. And I think one of your great gifts that your work has given the world has kind of been, if I could use a metaphor, of one great big table, right?
Yeah.
Um, how do we, as if people have heard this episode and they want a copy of the book, but they also just want to move into their lives and families and businesses in a more non-dualistic way, in a more connected way, how do we move into that place? What type of posture? What does it look like to have a lighter and brighter way of being in the world?
Yeah. Well, I think that, for me, and again, this is what it says to me, is we do need these distinctions in the surface world, and that's the gift of the mind. The mind sorts, prioritizes, and chooses.
Yeah.
That's not a philosophy to live by. It's a great tool. Just as you're saying, we need to know where the on and off switch is. We need to know what is cleaning fluid and what is milk and when the date is expired. But in the world that gives us meaning, to go back to make sure you look at the moon,
Yeah.
okay, in the world, the inner world, in the world of oneness, everything is the heart absorbs and integrates. And that's where meaning comes from.
Yeah.
Where we taste
Yeah.
of life. And so questions, feelings, leaning into life is there are no answers. The we all of questions in the inner plane open up a relationship.
Yeah.
Questions are like a door you open that you want to walk through with someone. So for me, I feel that I encourage everyone to hold nothing back. Trust, the word trust literally means follow your heart. To truly ask and listen of each other. So I think a great question that I am very interested is, and especially with children, but with anybody, is what's it like to be you?
Hmm. Hmm.
What's it like to, not what do you do? What do you do for a living? What's it like to be you? What do you see? What do what's one reliable truth that you keep returning to?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's one question you have, you know? And so I think one of the biggest things in our modern world is we need to, and it sounds simple, but it's not, and that is we need to restore our direct connection to life. Because if you have a direct connection to life, you have a reverence for life. And if you have
Yeah.
a reverence for life, you can't do harm.
Yes.
And most of the trappings of technology, I mean, I don't want to do without technology, but that's why we need an inner life.
That's right.
Okay. But the trappings or side effects, if you will, of the gifts of progress are all isolating, incubating, distancing. And we need to restore our direct connection of life. So a quick kind of example, my father, who's gone now about 15 years, but as a master woodworker, teacher, he never got to travel very much. And he subscribed to National Geographic because he loved to see the pictures of around the
Hmm.
world. Well, now you and I can go on YouTube and I can literally be over someone's shoulder, a video of them climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm never going to climb Mount Everest, but I didn't make the climb.
That's right.
And one of the insidious things about the non-real world, again, technology is a tool to get us closer to reality. It's not a substitute for reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Wow. I was speaking of mountains and hikes and things like that a few months ago, was on a hike with my daughter in Colorado. And she randomly says this, and I love this. She goes, "Hey, Dad, have you always been this zen?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness." First off, that is not, I could only hope to be whatever quote unquote that zen means. And I was like, how do I answer this question? Like, she's 15. How do I answer this? And I said, Story, all I can tell you is whatever you're seeing there, I had to have it mirrored to me. It didn't just show up one day. Um, and if I could name the names, the Parker J. Palmers, the Father Richard Rohrs, the Mark Nepos that have mirrored things for me, right? Like you got to kind of hold it up and go, "Hey, Ashton, look at this." And so I just want to share that with you from a place of gratitude.
Oh,
As
thank you.
even this project of Good, True, and Beautiful, it would not exist had I not had village elders like you show up in my life, books land in my lap, and never once did they say, "This is the truth and this is how you should see it." It was more of, maybe there's something interesting here for you. Maybe something here could work. And I think that would be your heartbeat for whoever's hearing us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Ashton. I appreciate that. And I so believe that. And, what we do, in conversations like this, it's what I hold in every circle that I'm blessed to hold with folks is, I always say to folks, I didn't give you one thing you didn't have before you walked in this room. We just loved it into the open together.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my friend, grace and peace to you and yours. Thank you for doing this again. I think you may be
Oh,
my most consistent guest. And I pinch myself every time that we get some time to spend together. I know one of these days, somehow, some way, I'm going to end up physically in your presence. Um,
that'd be wonderful. And thank you so much. And until next time, we'll be happy to do it again.
until next time, we'll find the language of the soul and see where we go.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. All
Grace
the
and peace.
best.
All right, my friend.